Well, welcome back. I hope you're well. This is the fifth of a series of interactions and conversations around the topic whether you were prepared for a successful relationship. In today's session, I would like to um, to connect you with elements of your past as a way of helping you come to a place of knowing or a better understanding of whether you have been prepared for a successful relationship. Now, we know that prior performance is generally no guarantee of future performance. But we also know that in many ways, one of the ways that we can, you might say, forecast what could happen in the immediate future, not the distant future, but the immediate future, is to extrapolate from the past. So, like I have done in the last two sessions, I will take you back into your past experiences with men with the intention of perhaps drawing out from said experiences what could be potentially a foreshadowing of your immediate future relationally, whether that be success or failure. Now, we know that success leaves clues. We know that failure leaves tracks. We also know that success is predictable. And in a similar fashion, failure is predictable. So, if we do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, that is not a success formula. That is an insanity formula. Hence, by looking into your past, maybe, just maybe, we might be able to identify learning experiences, perhaps success formulas, and therefore we can choose. Now, let me begin today's session by talking about battle strategy. Now, for those of you who've read the books of leadership in battle, military battle, or similar, one of the very important things that most people talk about is the importance of understanding and knowing your enemy. In other words, you need to know who the adversary is. To be successful in a battle, it's important to have a strategy. That strategy needs to be able to adapt to several scenarios, but you are advantaged if you have an understanding of who your enemy is, their battle strategy, and what they are likely to do. In this particular instance, we're not dealing with an adversary or an enemy. We're dealing with, hopefully, someone you intend to spend your future with, share memorable moments, have fun experiences, give your heart, your body, your dreams, your vision to, and have them give you theirs. So we're talking about someone who is intimate. The same principle of battle strategy applies, none the less. You have to understand and know the person, or have an understanding of the avatar of the person that you might be dealing with. So what I like to do is ask and test and see how much you really understand men. Now, I should make it clear that this conversation applies to both sexes. I can, and I will be speaking on the assumption that I am talking to ladies, because it's much easier to communicate with the opposite sex, from whom I might use the reference I can relate to from my lived experience. But you can switch. If you are a man listening, you can simply change the sexes. The same principles apply. One of the problems men have, or rather one of the complaints, I don't consider it to be a problem, but one of the complaints that most men will collectively share is that we don't feel that we are loved or needed or wanted, but most importantly, that we don't believe that we are studied. In other words, the opposite sex doesn't study us. Let me share a few things before I start today's session. Dating, relationships, and marriage is a very interconnected pursuit. On one side you have a man, and on the other side there is a woman. Historically speaking, the man is the one who pursues the woman, because women at an early age have a certain inherent value. What men pursue is beauty, youth, chastity, fertility, and therefore the younger the woman is, the more she has more of what we want. Hence the virgin's price, which is what we have to pay to have the opportunity to be blessed with your presence. Now this means that, generally speaking, men have a better understanding of women, because in order for us to be accepted by you, considering that women are the gatekeepers to their bodies, to their fertility or production capability, being the womb, they get to select. They hold the key, and they choose who they give that key to: your emotions, your physical body, and your reproductive gift. Women are gatekeepers. Men, we come to the gate and we knock on the door, hoping to be accepted. So we have to present ourselves in a way that will permit our entry into your space. Hence the saying, behold, I stand at the gate and knock. And if you opened and you saw me, would you let me in? Now, this means that, generally speaking, men, we study women. We either need to be aware of the role that resources play: money, power, influence, fame. We either need to be presentable physically, whether that be aesthetically, or whether that be in a chiseled fashion, perhaps in a styling, dressing that will be acceptable to women, in a trendy way that women find acceptable. We need to have game, the ability to speak, to be humorous, to be interesting, to have resources. And if we have all of that, we give ourselves a fighting chance of being heard. Not accepted, but heard. Now this means that most men study women. We have an understanding about what you like, what makes you cry, what you do not like. And because every woman is different, we have to adapt to what could be the average. So we study what will get us through 50%, 70%, 90%, 100%, recognizing that if we come with 100% of the knowledge, maybe our success rate could be 5%. That's how interesting the skewness of the distribution is. In any case, we study you as women, and therefore we come to the interaction with more knowledge than most women think. Women, on the other hand, generally speaking, at a younger age, have more of a higher value in the dating marketplace and in the relationship marketplace and in the marriage marketplace, because we, at a younger age as men, have very little resources. Whereas women have the most beauty, the most youth, the most fertility, they're more aligned. The younger she is, the more she is more attuned with her traditional core values, training, femininity, and all of the things that men find attractive in a woman. It's not the same with women. So most of the time, most women, because we are the ones who do the pursuing, and women do not do the pursuing, there is very little interest in understanding a man. Now, with that backdrop, here is a few questions that I hope will get you to think about how well and how much time you have invested, subconsciously or consciously, in getting to know who should be the most important man in your life. And in this instance, I go back to the conversation from 2 sessions ago, in which I asked, was your father at home? Was your father and mother married? And did you have a good relationship with your father? So here we go. Make a note of these questions, answer the questions, and assuming, and I should say this before I begin, assuming that perhaps you were one of the few who perhaps never got to know a father, you can substitute the word father with perhaps an uncle, a brother, a neighbor, but someone who played a pivotal role in your life during the early years. Number 1, what was your father's favorite song? What was your father's favorite movie? First question. Question 2. Can you name 1 or 2 of your father's memorable moments, the memorable moments in his life, his success moments? Now recognize that these would have taken place before, sometimes before you were born, or perhaps during your early years. But 1, 2, 3, 4 memorable moments that your father had that you know of. Question 3. What were your father's hobbies? 1, 2, 3 hobbies. Not just one. Whenever you answer these questions, it's easy to get 1. Try to go for 2 or 3. But what were your father's hobbies? And assuming he stopped being active, he must have had hobbies as a young man. But let's say he doesn't. What were his favorite sports? Favorite sports team, favorite sports, the sports he actually was involved in as a younger man or is still involved in as an older man. Number 4, what were your father's irritations and agitations at an early age, and even presently today? Now, for example, it could be that dad returns and mum comes to your bedroom to say, turn the music down, your dad is home. In other words, the environment had to change because a man who was honored in his house had returned. Or you were going out with your friends and mum said to you, just make sure you come back early so that your dad is not worried. These are agitations, irritations, things that you knew caused your father to perhaps be disappointed. Were there things that you were aware of that would disappoint him if you engaged in those activities? Number 5, think about 2 or 3 key moments in your lifetime as a young child and see if you can remember key moments that you were aware of of your father's young days, perhaps winning a football tournament, either by pictures that were shown to you or by descriptions that was told to you by him or by mum, or things your mum brags about. But think about 2 or 3 moments. Now, those 5 questions, the simple questions, like I said, if you do not have a father, substitute that avatar, that male frame, with any man of your choice. It could be a lover, a brother, a nephew, or cousin. It could also be an uncle, a neighbor, but someone who played a pivotal role from a position of authority in your life. Now let's park those questions and the answers to one side. And I want to switch. Now we started with strategy, and the strategy, I inverted the battle strategy with questions to see how well you knew, or how well you know the man in your life who should have been the most important man, effectively the first man that you ever loved. A father, a brother, a stepfather, an uncle. Let's pivot to the second part of today's discussion, which is what I call a time map. I'm going to give you a time map. Make a note of these. There will be questions that follow the time map. Years 2 to 4. That's number 1. Years 3 to 6. Or 2 to 4, years 2 to 4, 5 to 7, let's say 8 till 12, 13 until 18, and 18 and above. Now let me reiterate. The first is years 2 to 4. Second, 5 to 7. Third, 8 to 12. Fourth or fifth, 13 to 18, and then 18 and above. Now, those 4 or 5 time periods, I would like you to, if you could, this is where perhaps I would want you to shut your eyes and allow yourself to reach back into your memory bank. I want you to pull out from your memory periods within that age range. Now, you are the person who occupies that age period. So think about when you were between 2 and 4 and see if you could recall moments during that phase that you recall playing with your father. Play moments that you had with dad between 2 and 4. Are those vivid in your memory? Can you remember what took place? Between 5 and 7, are they vivid in your memory? Can you remember how you played and how dad played? Between 8 and 12, can you remember what it felt like? Now, I would hope that as the time gets closer to 18, that the memory would still be a lot easier to draw from. Now, between 13 and 18, can you remember? Remember, 13 to 18, you are coming into yourself as a woman, just like you are coming into yourself as a man. And therefore, it's not unusual to find that suddenly there is a change, especially if you are a girl, there is a change in how you play with dad. Why? That is the age where you start to get into puberty, your breasts start to enlarge, your body is doing some unique things. It's getting large in certain areas, and you're starting to find that you're more self-conscious, even in front of daddy. But still, did you play with that? And then 18 and above. Make a note of your answers. Now let me add something to the questions. Can you remember or can you recall moments during that period or during each of the time maps or time periods when you had to reach out to dad and you requested for help, either climbing down from a tree, getting off a bike, jumping from the wall, going for a walk, learning to ride your bike, playing football, falling down and perhaps hurting yourself. But when you called out for father, not mum, but father, can you recall any of those moments? And the final question, within the same time map period, who was the main masculine authority in your life throughout those phases? And was there a consistency as you journeyed through those phases? Was it the same man and the same avatar? And this is very, very important. The reason being, for some people, they remember between 2 and 3 having a father. Sadly, for some of us, perhaps our fathers passed away and there was no other person to fill that void. So there was almost a sense of your play was stopped and the connection and the love withered and died with the loss of a father. For some other men, it could be your father left and returned 5, 6, 7 years later, for whatever reason. And for some people who were lucky, you had a consistent father all through your life, and therefore you have different memories of playing with your father, loving your father, being loved by a father, even up until 18 and beyond 18. So not only has dad seen you grow into the woman you are, but you've also watched dad grow into the man he is. And both of you can draw from, with grace and also with humility, you can draw on things that could have been done differently and things that were done great. Now, finally, let's look at you as a present person today. If you are a woman, who is the main person or the masculine role model that you have in your life today? And should something happen to you, let's say you get into an accident, who is the first person you call? Is it dad? Or is it a masculine presence or avatar? Is it a partner, a husband, a boyfriend, a brother, a neighbor, a coach? But is there a masculine frame that you reach out to first, instinctively, the person you call? Now, those are all the questions for today. Let me bring it all together and explain why I have put these questions to you. The idea is not to dig up old wounds, and the idea is not to make you feel bad if for some reason you cannot answer these questions. The idea, like I stated in the first session and in the second session, is that we are creatures of habits. A multitude of habits is what we call paradigms. And each of us, our lives and the outcomes we have in the various parts of our lives are simply products or results or effects of the habits, the paradigms that we have in our subconscious mind. We are doing things subconsciously, and therefore our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are almost programmed. We are programmed to behave in a certain way and therefore get certain outcomes. Many of you will recognize this. I did. But many of you will recognize this, that there have been times in my relationship, and let me speak about myself, where I would be doing things that consciously I knew I did not want to do to the opposite sex. But I found myself doing the same things. For example, early days I found I had a 2-year dating cycle, maximum. When it got to the 2-year period, like a clock, it was fight or flight. I could time it with a precision. Why? That was a habit. The habit, the conditioning I had in my head and in my heart was, don't get too attached. Don't date anyone for too long. 6 months is a good time. But don't hold people knowing fully well that you were not ready to commit. So date for 3 months, date for 6 months, and move on. So subconsciously, whenever, and even when I dated people who were nice people, loving people, kind, great women, I found because I was subconsciously not ready, I would self-sabotage. And sometimes I would do it in a manner which perhaps did not show great maturity. And I knew as I was committing the acts that it wasn't something that I would consciously want to do, but subconsciously I was doing it. In other words, I was a product of my habits and the image that I had in my subconscious mind. So these questions that I have put forward to you was to enable you go back into your past, using your intellectual faculties, imagination, memory, reason, perception, and will. With your memory, you can replay your past experiences. With your imagination, you can pre-play and create your future experiences. The idea in these sessions so far was to go back into your memory, into your past, so we could understand what model, what image, what thoughts, what habits, what conditioning you have controlling your life, which would then enable you to seek through study the right knowledge and information, which will create awareness and better understanding, which rather than create, in my past, worry, doubt, which translates to fear, will provide faith, which comes from awareness and knowing, and therefore peace. As opposed to fear being translated to anxiety and being transferred through your body into your actions. That's the purpose of these questions. So as I leave you today, let me put to you what could be an exercise. Go back and listen to the conversation we've had and make a note of the questions and your answers. Do not look at the questions and answers from a moral perspective, and do not consider your answers to be either good or bad. They are what they are. The point being that if you identify patterns from your past, you're able to identify what those patterns will create as a result if those patterns are continued. So, you knowing with your imagination the future you want relationally, you're able to, like a book, you can turn the page and say, starting today, I will create a new idea. And that idea could be an appreciation, a longing to understand men, to understand the men in my life, a longing, an awareness of who they are and what makes them human, just like me, a desire to be connected to them, but to make them feel needed. And therefore, by taking actions, suddenly what you find is that your interpersonal relationships start to improve. They start to improve as a result of study, searching for information, an increased or a better level of awareness, and therefore better understanding, which provides faith, which allows you, particularly women, to be at ease and to rest in your feminine. And therefore, you find that rather than have worry and doubt, what you have is inspiration and peace and a serene nature which you bring to your relationships. Now, I hope that has been useful.